And here is my uncle, the host of the Blue Gold Show, Mr. Blue Gold.
So we had an interesting weekend at the lodge here. You know, Harold was talking about all them newfangled video games that they have in 3D and the ones you can hold in your pocket and play on your phone and whatnot. So we thought we'd educate little Harold in the joys of the original video game. So we decided to dust off the old Atari and hook her up and show him what it's all about, except when we did, we had a problem. The picture came on in black and white. So, being men, we decided to go at it even though we had no idea what we were doing. The first thing we decided to do was to change the video cord out. Now, we had lost the original video cord a long time ago, so we decided to make a new one with an old coat hanger and the handyman secret weapon duct tape. Well, we decided we would just make a new one using the same kind of pattern, so we found a nice new shiny coat hanger, got out some fresh new duct tape and hooked it all together, but it kept falling off the TV. So Stinky Peterson, well, he gave us some old chewing gum that was still relatively moist. Not sure how that happened. He wasn't chewing any gum at the time, so we didn't dare ask where he got it from, but we hooked it to the TV and it hooked up just fine. And lo and behold, it was still in black and white. And it's at that time that someone piped up and reminded us that the lodge only has a black and white TV. So we decided to go ahead and play. First up was Old Man Sedgwick against Harold, playing this Map Mania Wrestling. Except the problem was, in black and white, both guys looked identical. So when someone won, they both claimed victory. Old Man Sedgwick said he won, Harold said he won. But since Old Man Sedgwick had the shotgun on him at the time, we decided to declare him the winner, which made him happy and put the gun away and made Harold upset and make him go home for the rest of the day. So it was a win for everybody. Anyway, welcome to the show. We're going to talk about Scrapyard Dog Meltdown, which is another way of describing Moose Thompson's wedding last fall. So let's get things started, and remember, always keep your stick on the ice.
On today's episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, we will be discussing CX 7875 Meltdown and CX 7879 Scrapyard Dog.
Hey guys, welcome back to another, finally, episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. My name is Phil and I'll be your host this evening. I thought I'd start off with an experience I had purchasing some stuff off of eBay. I'm very experienced buying and selling on the eBay, and recently I bought a lot that included an Atari 7800 system and several games. Now, one thing I've done to help build my collection at a reasonable cost is I try and find the harder to find games in lots, and usually it's a little bit cheaper to do it that way than it is just to buy them by themselves. So I found this lot, had some 2600 games actually I was looking for, not 7800, I'm pretty good there. And I bought it, and it came to my house, and it was described as used, and it came in okay condition, but when I hooked it up, it did not power on at all. Tried a new power supply, new work, that didn't work either, so had a busted system. So I contacted the seller and I said, hey, the system doesn't work. What can we do about it? Like thinking maybe I could return it for a refund or something. And he said, well, it worked when I sent it and you never asked if it worked. So I was kind of taken back. So what do you do if you buy something off eBay and it doesn't work? Well, you open a case through eBay. If the seller isn't being helpful, you open a case. And what happened was eBay gave them about 4 days to respond. At that point, you have to go back in and tell eBay, yep, they still haven't responded yet. And here's what they did for me this time around. They actually gave me a prepaid label to mail it back to the seller, which was pretty cool. It didn't cost me anything. I was willing to pay the money to ship it back to him, but he didn't want any part of any kind of return or refund, even though he said the system was used and was in only showed like slight signs of use or something like that. He didn't say anything about being broken, and he even admitted it worked. So I sent it back, and as soon as the delivery confirmation number said that he got it back, eBay gave me a full refund. So that's just like a tip when you're buying and selling on eBay. If you do have a problem, try and work it out with the seller. If he doesn't or she doesn't listen, contact eBay. Usually they got the buyers back in most cases. Sometimes as a seller that can make things hard because if it's their word against yours, they'll side with the buyer sometimes. But in this case, I'm glad they did. I'd also be on the guard to check feedback to see what other people have said. Now, in this case, he had perfect feedback, so I'm actually going to leave him his first. Actually, I already did. I left him his first negative feedback. I don't like to do that because it really does hurt sellers, but in this case, the way I was treated, I wanted to warn other people. And looking at his other stuff, he wasn't experienced selling games. Sometimes that can be a good way to get a good deal, getting someone who's not experienced selling games, but you do have a risk with that. So that's something you have to weigh as well. And of course, always look at the pictures and the photos, and that sometimes gives you an idea. If the games look like they've been buried in a desert somewhere in New Mexico, and it doesn't say that, you may not want to purchase them because they may not work as it is. All right, so just a little story that I went through. Overall, I am happy with my purchases on eBay recently, but sometimes you do hit some hiccups in the road. All right, let's go ahead and get to today's games.
You are listening to the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. And if you didn't already know that, I'm glad that I could inform you of what you've been listening to prior to this clip playing, because you may have been confused. Just like I'm confused. And Atari was confused when they waited so long to release this console. Jack Tramiel. And in case you couldn't tell by the obligatory other podcast theme music playing in the background, this is Paul from the Intellivisionaries. And when I'm not making bumpers for other podcasts like the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast that you're listening to now, I record another podcast called The Intellivisionaries with my co-hosts Rick and Will. And occasionally Virtual Will.
I think so.
And the Odyssey 2. And my son Luke.
Hi.
And my stepson Alex.
Hi.
And my wife Georgia. And the Corrections Robot.
Anytime.
Which apparently has become quite popular now on other podcasts for some reason. Moving right along, back to Phil and more 7800 Game by Game podcast. Unless you turn this off right now, then that's pretty much the end of Phil and the podcast. Just saying.
Meltdown. A light gun game for your Atari Pro system.
Meltdown has a copyright year of 1990, making it one of the last releases. The box, the art is actually pretty decent for what it is. At the top, you have Meltdown and kind of a dirt brown 3D font color and style. The end of the down is starting to melt, which I guess is very fitting. Under that, you can see a couple smokestacks from a nuclear power plant. One of them is cracked in half, and they look like they're just made out of like brown bricks, which usually when you see those nuclear smokestacks or whatever you call them, they're like a white, very white, plain white color, but these are made of some sort of brown. You can see some barbed wire fencing if you look really closely in the background, or I think that's barbed wire way in the background that's like kind of crumbling. And to the left, you can see what I'm guessing is the power plant itself. It's just like a regular building with extremely tiny windows, but a gigantic door. If you look at the scale of those windows look like they're big enough to put your cup of coffee on, and it would cover up the whole window basically. And the most of the box, the kind of the bottom 3/4 corner of it, has a giant explosion. You have what appears to be red bricks on top, all crumbling, and below that you could see a lot of just ground that's just crumbling, and there's a big crater, and at the bottom of the crater you see like a nuclear symbol and some fire at the bottom. So it's okay box art. It doesn't do much for me, but it's not terrible either. On the back of the box it says destroy the deadly sparks, and sparks is spelled S-P-A-R-K-X, and whenever I say sparks I think that's how they spell it. And you have two screenshots which they really don't do much for me. They're different, I'll give them that. One's from Reactor 1, which is on the right, and one's from Reactor 20 on the left. Usually the one would be reversed, since you read from left to right here in the States at least. And really you just see like blocks and little dots and specks, and it almost looks like it could be a billiard game, to be honest with you, with a messed up table. It's not that great. They should have probably put at least one shot of maybe like the title screen. Anyway, terrorist groups from around the world have sabotaged 20 nuclear power plants. Now reactors are rapidly filling with sparks, and nobody can do anything to stop the inevitable meltdowns. Nobody but you, that is, of course, armed with your powerful new atomic gun, because how do you take care of nuclear meltdowns with a nuclear gun? You put on a nuke suit and step inside into the first reactor. Zip, and it actually says that, zip. A spark misses your head and hits the wall of the reactor. Poing, is that supposed to be like pong with an I in the middle? It bounces off the wall and heads straight for the control rods at the reactor core. You take aim knowing full well that a bad shot can further damage the reactor. You pull the trigger. Kerpowie! I've never seen kerpowie as a word before. You got it. You see 2 more sparks to your right and 6 to your left. The place is humming with them. Lightning fast action leaves no time to question your abilities. You must act quickly. Can you do it? The whole industrial world is depending on you. It's single player action, 20 skill levels for the Atari 7800 light gun for 1 player. Winners don't use drugs, and that is from the FBI director. All right, the manual, I believe it's 10-page stapled. The cover actually gives it a more grim look with the red, black, and white coloring of the cover art. As it has with other cover art, it gives it a more serious tone to it, and the nuclear symbol that's at the bottom of the crater actually sticks out more. It looks more radioactive, if you will, because it contrasts with the darkness around it. In the manual, it says, don't overreact, don't panic. A gang of international terrorists have systematically set about destroying the world. They sabotaged a number of nuclear reactors, which is 20, by unleashing deadly string of sparks that will break down the protective control rods and make their way into the very core of each reactor. If the sparks reaches the core, the end results will be a dreaded meltdown. If the terrorists are successful in their hideous plot, we can kiss the world goodbye. Only you stand between life as we know it and total annihilation. You're armed with a specially engineered sparks-destroying gun, a blueprint for each reactor, your wits, and your desire to save the world. Get moving! There's no time to lose. And there is 2 different difficulty levels. You can play 1 or 2 players, which would be you take turns alternating, and you can play novice or expert. And it says the expert level contains faster, more numerous sparks. And then you pull the trigger of the light gun to select your option. So you begin play level by shooting the word start. And there's also a password screen that you can use the light gun to enter in passcodes, which is kind of a nice feature for this game. Playing the game. Meltdown is a fast action arcade game. The object of the game, well, if it was never in an arcade, is it really an arcade game? It's an arcade style light gun game, but it's not, I wouldn't say arcade game. The object of the game is to keep deadly sparks from eating away at the cores of 20 different nuclear reactors. If you can't blast the sparks before they chew up the reactor cores, the result is a meltdown. The area surrounding each reactor's core is filled with radioactive matter. 2 protons rapidly circle the core. When the 2 protons intersect, the sparks are released into the reactor. As many as 14 sparks can be on screen at the same time. Let's see you do that, Nintendo. You must shoot the sparks quickly before they can damage the reactor core. So on the outside edges of the wall are these 2 protons, or these 2 circles, and they keep bouncing back and forth. So like they both might be heading to the right. As soon as they touch, it's like they bounce off each other and head to the left. Every time they touch, they release more sparks until the number of sparks they have to release is done. Inside the cores of each reactor are 8 or 9 blue control rods arranged in various geometric patterns. Each time a sparks hits a control rod, the rod sustains damage. These rods keep the walls of the reactor from collapsing. If the rods are damaged, the reactor walls begin to collapse. If the rods are destroyed, the wall collapses completely and the entire reactor suffers a meltdown. And by the way, every time they say meltdown, the M and the D in down is both capitalized, but it's a singular word. You know, kind of like McDonald's, it's meltdown. Use a light gun to shoot at the sparks as they bounce off the borders and control rods. When you destroy sparks, it will disappear. Be careful, a bad shot from you can damage the control rods. If you place a shot outside the reactor core into the contaminant wall, you will also damage the reactor. If you shoot and don't hit anything, a barrier will appear. These barriers will function like a wall until it fades away. You can have up to 4 barriers on screen at a time. The sparks will rebound off the barrier, so a well-placed shot can reflect sparks away from the control rods. In addition to shooting sparks and setting up barriers, you can also protect the reactor core by using special protective power crystals and bonus blocks found in each reactor. And we'll get to that later. After a time, the Earth will suffer damage from the reactor radiation. The damage will result in an increased seismic activity. The earthquakes will further damage the reactor rods. Protected rods will suffer less damage from the earthquakes. Basically, the screen shakes a little bit. Save all 20 reactors to win the game. If your score is higher, the lowest score displayed on the high then the lowest score displayed in the high score screen. The high score initials screen displays, of course, until you turn the system off. Enter your initials to be displayed next to your high score. The high score screen will then display in demo mode. High scores are retained during the current play session only. Once the game is switched off, your high scores are earned are erased. Well, they actually said that. Most manuals, I don't think, don't. All right, screens. 2 Meltdown screens are important to the actual gameplay. One is the reactor statistics screen, which lists the information about each reactor, the place. The other is the action screen where the game takes place, so your screen before each round. So that's the statistics screen. It will show the high score for the current session, the reactor blueprint, so just a layout of the reactor, your current score, and the number of sparks you need to eliminate to save the reactor. It will also show you the different power-ups you can earn during that level. There's different power-ups you can earn throughout the game, but each reactor has a specific amount. So even though there's multiple power-ups, you might only be able to get 4 or 3 of them during a play session. Then the action screen is the screen at the back of the box. That looks kind of like a billiards or pool table with a bunch of stuff in the middle of it. And it tells you at the top the reactor number, and it shows you your score and how many sparks you have remaining. And it also shows you everything on the screen. You know, your control rods that are in the middle. The protons are on the outside. I told you that as well. And yeah, that's basically it. So items, in addition to deadly sparks, other items can be found in the reactors. They can help you to rid each reactor of sparks. But before we get to the items, let's talk about the sparks themselves. They're deadly invaders that threaten the power plants with devastating meltdown. Shoot sparks to destroy them. Container sparks open every round of play. Container sparks can float into the reactor from various points. If they hit the reactor wall, a control rod, or one of your shots, they will burst into 6 different bounder sparks, which will bounce all over the playfield. You must corner and destroy all 6 bounder sparks. So once you open them, once you shoot them, or once they hit something, they explode into several mini ones. The bounder sparks are the most common type of sparks. They are tiny, and they bounce off different elements within the reactor, off the reactor itself, inflicting damage wherever they hit it, which basically every spark does. The exploding sparks are very deadly. These sparks slowly change color from blue to red. If you blast an exploding spark while it's still blue, the energy is absorbed. If you hit one of the sparks after it's changed to red, it will send particles flying in 4 directions away from the point of impact. So another one of these sparks that multiplies. The expanding sparks require 5 hits to destroy. They expand slightly each time they are hit. These sparks are slightly more damaging if they hit the reactor's wall and they have expanded, after they have expanded. And then the quick sparks also require 5 hits to destroy, but they increase in speed rather than size with each hit. Note, red sparks are more damaging than blue sparks. Power crystals are identified by a single number or letter. Shoot the power crystal icon to release its special power. The special power of the shot crystal will remain in effect until you finish at reactor level. The single exception is the control rod repair. So the B is for a big shot. It doubles the size of your shot barrier that round, and it's especially helpful in creating blocks around the sparks and around the control rods. The 2 gives you 2 extra shots, which allows you to place up to 6 barriers instead of the usual 4. C is really nice. It's continuous shot, allows you to shoot continuously. So you hold down the trigger, this game requires a lot of shooting. So just holding down the trigger makes it like a machine gun, basically, like in Operation Wolf or Alien Brigade. F is for freeze. It causes everything to slow down and then freeze for a short time before thawing and resuming. K is for kill barriers. Are deadly to sparks. Instead of bouncing off the barriers by a missed shot, the sparks running into the killer barriers are destroyed. The R is for control rod repair, and they repair some of the damage done to the control rods. P is for protect control rods, puts a series of indestructible barriers around each control rods for the duration of the round. And then D is for double points, and it doubles the point value. So, of course, those are just they're random. It depends on the reactor. You can't use them all, but it is nice that they last the whole level. Bonus blocks. Bonus blocks are impervious to sparks damage. A bonus block appears at random locations within the reactor whenever you temporarily eliminate all the sparks from the reactor before the next sparks is released. The block remains in position for a short time, then disappears. And I believe they'll probably say it, but with these bonus blocks, they give you like a combo scoring. So you shoot 1, you get 100. You shoot 2, you get 200. Something like that. Strategy. Use the freeze power crystal as often as you can. Destroy the frozen sparks before they thaw. Hit the sparks as soon as they appear. The earlier you destroy sparks, the less damage they cause. Learn to protect control rods by surrounding them with barriers. Protected control rods suffer less damage from sparks and earthquakes. All right, so there's your hints. Basically, this is a game where if it's moving, you shoot it, and you try and shoot a lot, but the enemies the sparks are very tiny, and the XE light gun is not the most accurate. It goes a little bit to the left, so you're just shooting a ton in this game, and you basically want to keep the sparks from hitting everything. They hit stuff too much, the screen starts to get smaller and smaller, the area inside, and so it's just one of these games where you're just furiously shooting. Scoring. Container sparks are 10, bounder sparks are 20 points, exploding sparks and their particles are 40 points each. The expanding sparks, the first 4 hits is 10 points, and the fifth and final hit is 50. Quick sparks, the first 4 hits is 10 points, the fifth and final hit is 50. And sparks hitting the barrier, you get a point. Bonus blocks are worth 100 points for the first block, I was correct, and 100 additional points for subsequent blocks. For example, your first is worth 100, but by your fourth, it's worth 400. If you miss a block, the block value drops back down to 100. And sometimes these bonus blocks appear right in the middle of the reactor, making it very hard to hit them. Shooting double points, power crystals doubles all your earned points, and that is the manual. The graphics in the game are nothing impressive. The title screen's okay. You have just, it says Meltdown, a nice cool little font. And at the end of the screen, depending if you survive or not, you can see like a little meltdown. That's okay. But like I said, the game itself is one of the most limited looking games on the 7800, despite being a last release. And everything's so tiny. It's hard to make detailed graphics when you have very tiny sprites. So it's the graphics really don't do anything for me. One of the kind of the worst looking games, but it's kind of a product of the game itself. When you have a lot of tiny things, you can't make it look very good. I mean, a lot of these things are tinier than Robotron 2084, and that used a lot of tiny things, but at least they had some detail. You could tell what different enemies are. You can tell what different enemies are, but it's not impressive. Music and sounds. The music at the beginning is nice. I like the music in the game. It reminds me a little bit of some of the other late releases. I'm thinking like Motor Psycho and Fatal Run. So I don't know if the same guy did a lot of the music, but the music at the end of the 7800's life, they were really getting a lot out of that 2600 sound. I'll tell you that. I like that. The sounds are okay, but this is a game I'm shooting so much. All I'm doing is hearing is the shooting basically over and over again. And that's kind of how it can be with light gun games. Oh, I also forgot to say this about the graphics. Because you have the flash every time you shoot, and because you're shooting all the time, this game has a lot of flashing, and the flashing did start to bother me after a while. Anyways, let's go ahead and listen to the music and sounds. Let you decide how it sounds, and then we'll go from there. Both Atari Age and Digital Press agree. They give it a rarity 2. I would actually put that up to a 3. This isn't that common of the game. It is an easy late titled release to find, but it's not like there's that many of them. I'd bump that up a little bit. There were 2 external reviews at Atari Age, one for 60%, one for 72%. The average was 66%. The High Score Club, they actually had one. I'm not a big fan of doing high score clubs for light gun games, but I can kind of understand for Meltdown because you're just shooting. Shadow 460 has a score of 104,308. They didn't say what difficulty that was on. There was one copy that sold on eBay loose for $6, and that just sold. And there was a bunch of new copies. This is one of those games where I think Jinx is another one where you can find it almost easier as a new sealed copy than as a complete or loose copy. And the new copies were only selling for like $12-13. So these are pretty cheap to find. And of course, this is not a game I owned growing up. So there you go. That in a nutshell is Meltdown. Shoot everything in there. It's tiny and it's small and it's, you're shooting stuff. Let's go on to the next game.
What's up, guys? Nick Stevens here from the Genesis Gems podcast, and you are listening to the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. For more on the Genesis Gems podcast, head on over to www.genesisgemspodcast.com. Catch you later.
Scrapyard Dog. Who let the dog out? Was it you?
All right, Scrapyard Dog carries a copyright year of 1990, so this is quite a late release. So we were looking again when the Sega Genesis was on shelves. And according to Moby Games, it was made by Blue Sky Software, who also did Ninja Golf. So far so good. The cover of the box, it has some interesting art. It once again, it looks like basically not a professional did this. It looks like someone maybe doodling in high school, or maybe even a good middle schooler did this drawing. So you have a guy who kind of looks like Joe from Blue's Clues. He's got a blue shirt on. He has brown hair that needs a haircut, big smile, big chin, and a really massive nose. I mean, it looks like he's having some sort of allergic reaction. And you have this dog that looks like it has 2 gray tennis balls for cheeks and bat-like ears and a little tongue sticking out. And you have this kind of a sunshiny mix of red and yellow stripes beaming out from the center, and it says Scrapyard Dog in green at the bottom. So if I was a kid, I don't know that this would really attract me. It would look kind of, homemade almost. On the back, we have Scrapyard Dog at the top. And on the right side, we have 3 screenshots going down the right. So this is a newer style box. And they're good screenshots. You got one of the guy in the sewers, one playing a piano, and one in some sort of office or room. And it says, can Louis save his pooch from becoming dog meat? There's a little reference to Sewer Shark there, except Sewer Shark didn't exist yet. Our friend Louis loved his dog, but why would some thugs pooch nap this poor puppy? The thugs want the deed to the scrapyard. Will Louis stand for this? So far, this isn't making sense to me. It's up to you and Louis to survive over 15 levels of danger and find the ultimate bad dude, Mr. Big. Scrapyard Dog features graphics and sound that push all the limits. It's part of the power that Atari brings you for use with the Atari 7800 system and controllers. The manual, I believe it's 8 pages stapled. The black and white version of the cover art makes this look kind of creepy. And it says, kidnapped canine. Louis, the junkyard guy, was just settling down to his regular Sunday afternoon lunch. A foot-long head cheese sandwich with tons of mustard, 6 garlic pickles, a 2-pound bag of potato chips, and a diet soft drink. I like the detail there. The diet soft drink was because Louis was watching his weight. Nobody likes a fat junkyard guy. So this is actually kind of funny to me. There was a time I worked in a drive-thru, one of my first jobs, and I do remember one time someone ordered the biggest meal you could get, the double quarter-pounder meal, supersized, and a Diet Coke. And when they ordered the Diet Coke, I just laughed to myself. I'm like, what's the point at this point, right? Just go all the way. The phone rang and Louis picked it up, even though his mouth was full. He listened a few moments and then sprayed crumbs of bread and head cheese all over the office. A dastardly dognapper gang kidnapped his best pal Scraps, the infamous Scrapyard Dog. If Louis doesn't hand over the deed to the junkyard, Scraps is doggone. Okay, now the story makes sense. Louis played along and told the kidnappers he would bring the deed to the first checkpoint to receive further instructions. But it's un-American to knuckle under to kidnappers and terrorists, and Louis won't do that. He's going to go to the checkpoint and find the location of the gang's headquarters, and he's going to go rescue Scraps and rid the town of puppy purloiners. With a few useful items for weapons, mostly old cans, Louis sets up to save his buddy Scraps. Can Louis save his cruelly captured canine, or will little Scraps end up dog meat? Find out and help Louis save Scrapyard Dog. I think that's one of the better background stories that we've gotten. Of course, what doesn't make sense is in the game you go through these levels, so you're just supposed to go to these checkpoints to find out where to go, but there's all these enemies, so it makes it seem like the world that you live in is just naturally dangerous because these guys aren't trying to stop. These aren't like the henchmen, I don't think, because why would they stop you from handing over the deed, right? So you just live in a dangerous world, evidently. Let's see. Scrapyard Dog is 17 levels consisting of jumping, running, and throwing actions, and it tells you how to turn on your system. Okay, let's see. You press pause to pause, select for a new game. Playing the game. The object of the game is to defeat the gang of criminal kidnappers, dognappers, and rescue Scraps. The kidnappers leave instructions for Louis at each of the 16 checkpoints. Louis has a specific period of time to reach each checkpoint. Along the way, he must dodge rats and other annoying obstacles like rolling tires. Louis must also collect as many weapons and other useful items as possible. Weapons prepare Louis for the more difficult higher levels of Scrapyard Dog and will ensure his success when he comes faced with the leader of the evil dognappers. Items such as shields will protect Louis from harm. Louis begins his quest with a single shield and 5 cans. There are 6 rounds in Scrapyard Dog. Each of the first 5 rounds contain 3 levels: Junkyard, City, and Sewer. There is no sewer in the final round, but the city and junkyard are more hazardous than ever. Louis must scrap his way through each of the rounds to answer the phone at the end of the round. That's where Louis receives his instructions and how to progress to the next level. The last round of the game takes place in Mr. Big's warehouse. There, Louis receives a special challenge he must overcome before he can rescue his pitiful pooch. So for the first 5 rounds, you have an outside kind of like, you see these fences and grass kind of level. Then you have one that's kind of in the streets where you can go into rooms. And then you have one that's in a sewer. And it just repeats that over and over until the last, the 6th round, where it changes things up a little bit. So you use your joystick, move it left or right to move Louis. Up allows Louis to knock on doors, activate and tune piano rooms, pick up the phone at the end of each round, and enter the sewer pipe. So pushing up is like do something wherever you're at. So knock on a door, push a button kind of deal. Down plus the right fire button activates this special weapon. Left fire button makes Louis jump. Hold the button down for a longer period to make him jump higher. The right fire button throws a can. When combined with down, throws a special weapon. There are bonus rooms. They contain special items, which Louis will find invaluable in his quest to rescue poor Scraps. Doors in the city only open when Louis completes a special knocking sequence. If Louis stops knocking for any reason, such as to avoid rats or other dangerous obstacles, he must start the knocking sequence again. Needless to say, finding out what goes on behind closed doors is a hazardous maneuver at best. Well, everything's hazardous in this game. So when you knock, you have to wait till the knocking animation sound stops, and then you have to wait a moment to see if a door opens. Sometimes they open, like if you're knocking on a door, sometimes it will open after a brief pause, and sometimes you have to wait. And there was many times I knocked, got impatient, went on to the next door, but the other one opened. I just didn't wait long enough, so I had to go back and knock again. So in some of these bonus rooms, there's piano rooms. They're found in dumpsters and the junkyard levels. Musicians never care where they play, do they? Louis must play a tune by pushing the joystick while staying on top of the P icon. The tune plays. Then Louis must jump down to the piano to reproduce that tune that was played. Louis plays one note each time he jumps on a piano key. If Louis plays the tune correctly, a large bonus is awarded. Smaller bonuses are awarded for a nearly correct tune, and no bonus is awarded if he has a tin ear and it makes too many mistakes. If this happens, he can exit the room and try again. The office room is found in the city. 3 bonus items will appear among the chairs and filing cabinets. These items must appear one at a time. Louis must hustle to get each item before it disappears and quickly move to the next bonus item. He can get all 3 if he moves fast enough. This is where the diet soda pays off. Nice. Sewer room, only found in the sewer levels. Makes sense. This room contains multiple sewer pipes. Louis must choose the correct combination of pipes to reach a special sewer room. Bonus, if he fails to guess the right combination, he falls into the icky sludge and is booted out of the room. Louis loses no lives if this occurs, just a lot of self-respect. Shops, they're found in all levels and rounds. In the junkyard, shops are found in dumpsters, which you just jump on and there's an opening. Low rent, what the heck? That's actually what the manual says. In the city, shops are located behind some of the doors. In the sewers, they can be found at the end of certain pipes. Once Louis, and so this is kind of like Super Mario, except the pipes, you can see them like in the walls. Instead of jumping on top of them, you kind of walk in them. Kind of like, think more like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles walking in the pipes. Once Louis enters the shop, he can either buy the offered item, if he has a money course, just like real life, or he can recycle collected cans for money. If Louis wishes to buy the item offered, he can rudely say, yeah, left joystick, or nah, right joystick. If he says nah, he exits the shop. If he says yeah, then he must push the left fire button once for every item he wishes to buy. For example, press the button once to buy 1 bomb, twice for 2. Extra man shops, extra lives can be purchased here for big bucks. Shield shops, shields protect Louis from dying. Each shield protects Louis against 1 hit, after which the shield disappears. Can recycle shop, Louis can do his civic duty and earn much needed bucks by exchanging his extra cans for money. But the word extra is key here. Louis has to keep some cans to ward off foes. He shouldn't sell them all. Super can shops seek out enemies and destroy them. Louis doesn't even have to aim. These cans are very valuable and worth the price Louis must pay. The bomb shop, bombs destroy everything appears on the screen when Louis throws them. Oh, almost everything. They don't destroy Louis. Nice touch. Extra time shop. Extra time will give Louis a better chance at rescuing his pitiful puppy Scraps. And each second Louis has to spare at the end of the round is worth 50 points. Extra time is important when going for higher scores. Items. Throughout every level, Louis encounters different items. Some items are useful. Louis can pick them up and help him in his quest. Other items Louis will want to avoid, like enemies and obstacles. And bonus items. Bonus items appear when Louis jumps on top of and destroys an enemy, or in the bonus rooms, as described in the bonus room section. So you can get money bags. They're worth $1. Gold money bags are worth $10. Well, gold's worth more now. Can will give him 1 can. Clock will add 30 seconds of time. Heart will give him an extra life. weapons and shields. Louis must collect weapons and shields to survive the dog-eat-dog world and save his poor pup. The following items are found in Scrapyard Dog. The shield protects Louis from one hit from an enemy or obstacle. After the shield saves Louis, it disappears. Louis begins the game with one shield. Shields will not protect Louis from dying if the cause of death is a fall. Help, I've fallen and I can't get up. Cans are Louis' basic weapon. He begins the game with 5 cans, must collect more on his travels through each level. When Louis throws a can, it will bounce a few times before hitting and destroying the enemy target. Super cans are great because they seek out enemies and destroy them. Louis doesn't need to aim, as it said before. They keep on destroying enemy after enemy until they run out of energy. These puppies are especially effective against birds. Bombs are the most powerful special weapon. When tossed, a bomb destroys everything on screen except Louis. Enemies and obstacles. So mice, rats, birds, and gangsters can be overcome with weapons. Toss a can or super can or bomb or watch the fly fur. If all else fails, Louis can jump on his enemies just like Mario. Even the diet drinks can't save flattened foes from Louis' fattened belly. Tires must be avoided. They can't be destroyed by anything but bombs. Basketball, only bombs can flatten these dangerous hazards, just like real life. Fire hydrants, out of respect for Scraps, Louis tries to not destroy fire hydrants. However, sometimes things get too dangerous. Louis must blast a hydrant with a well-thrown bomb. Strategy super cans are for the birds. Flying foes are hard to hit with anything else. Exchange cans for cash whenever possible, but always keep a few on hand. Watch tires and basketballs carefully. Learn to time their bounces. Running under these hazards is much easier than jumping over them. When there are too many tires and basketballs to avoid, use a bomb. It pays to squash the bad guys. Scoring, let's see, cans, clocks, gold money bags. Money bags are all worth 25 points. Timer is 50 points per second. Gangsters are 200 points. Mice and rats are 100. Basketballs, birds, hydrants, and tires are 500 points for destroying these. And a heart gives you 1 extra life. Graphically speaking, it's tough to say. I mean, it looks good for a 7800 game, but it's hard to say. There's just something missing. I don't know how to say it. I encourage you to check out video of it. There was a version made for the Atari Lynx. It looks much, much better. You have a nice opening screenshot that kind of mimics the box art in a sense. And I like the little phones at the end of the levels. It looks good. It's just not great. I guess that's how you put it. Looks good, but not great. Music and sounds. The sounds are fine. The music, it's nice because they have different music for all the 3 different levels. So the scrapyard, the city, and the underground sewers. But it's really busy, man. Those music notes just keep on moving. A lot of 16th notes going on there. It's just makes you almost out of breath if you listen to it. I'll let you listen to it for a second and see what you guys think. Atari Age gives it a rarity 3. Digital Press gives it a 2. I would say it's either a 3 or right now it might even be a 4. It's a harder to find game. There was 5 external reviews. Gave it a 75% average with a high of 80, low of 70. So somewhat favorable score. For the high score club, Propane 13 has 2,192,600 points. On eBay, loose copies were going for $20 to $30, complete copies $25 to $30, and new $30 to $60. So if you played your cards right, for $30 you could get it loose, complete, or new. It's one of those games where it almost doesn't matter. It is rare; it doesn't pop up a lot. Of course, this is not a game I owned. I already had a Sega Genesis by the time this came out, and this game was not featured in Atarian magazine. Neither was Meltdown because they were so late. All right, that is Scrapyard Dog. Let's go ahead and go to listener feedback.
Greetings, Earth people. It's me again. I See Robots from the greatest podcast in the world, the Toys R Us Report. And you are listening to the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast with my brother from another mother, the No Swear Gamer, available exclusively on the Retro Junkies Network.
I asked the members of the forums over at Atari Age and Atari.io what their thoughts are on today's games. Now, I give them a 4-point scale to rate these games on. If it's a top 5 game on the system, it's a Hall of Fame game, followed by a solid game, then comes a meh game, and then if it's a bottom 5 game on the system, it is a trash game, and that is of the officially released games here in the United States. Okay, let's see. Let's start over at Atari.io. Let's start with Justin, who founded Atari.io. I think Scrapyard Dog is a solid game, but had the potential to be a Hall of Fame game had it and the 7800 in general received the time and resources it needed to put out really good stuff. Scrapyard Dog was an original idea and fairly detailed. It told a story, it had a unique little world, the characters and the sprites looked good, but Atari could have put much more effort into competing against Mario and the rest of the mascot games. I would call Meltdown a meh game. It was essentially one screen with graphics that didn't seem like much of an improvement over the 2600 or 5200, and Meltdown felt a lot like Reactor on the 2600 with a light gun. Once again, when competing against Nintendo light gun games like Duck Hunt, Wild Gunman, and Hogan's Alley, it was a half-hearted effort and Atari could have done much, much more to putting out great games. Rick R said he's not familiar with either game. Sorry, no need to apologize. The professor said, I thought Scrapyard Dog was very sweet, just a guy and his dog. It felt like a very 90s sitcom. It's for sure one of my favorite 7800 games. Let's see, Malik Zero, he said, Louie the Junkyard Guy was just sitting down to his high regular Sunday afternoon lunch, a foot-long head cheese sandwich with tons of mustard, 6 garlic pickles, and a 2-pound bag of potato chips and a diet soda. The diet soft drink was because Louie was watching his weight. Nobody likes a fat junkyard guy, quoting the manual. Writing like this is one of the many reasons why I love Atari. I'd say Scrapyard Dog is a solid title on the 7800. If you're hungry for platformers, get it hungry. On the Atari, there really isn't much to choose from aside from Pitfall 2, which of course is a 2600 game. My first thoughts after booting up the first level is it's bigger. Oh my science, the nose is getting bigger. And I appreciate the manual too. Retro Gamer 81081 says, I'm not familiar with Meltdown, never played it, but Scrapyard Dog is a solid game. It was great to see 7800 at the time have a side-scrolling platformer, and it had a chance to be a top-of-the-line game. I thought the music was pretty good and catchy. It was a 7800's version of Super Mario Brothers type game. Some of the levels had some unforgiving leaps, which were tough to make, resulting in constant deaths. Atari should have put a little more effort into making it an enjoyable game rather than a hard game. And over at Atari Age, Drac is back, says Meltdown is trash. Honestly, found it too hard and repetitive to be any fun. Scrapyard Dog is solid plus. Until this game, there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not 7800 could play a long side-scrolling game like Super Mario. The answer is, this answers the question. 17 side-scrolling levels, hidden areas, fast animation, and scrolling. Sound is pretty good too, given that it's only TIA. Its biggest weakness, in my opinion, is the difficulty level is merciless in spots. Some of the jumps, like the leap you have to do in Sewer Level 2-3, are pretty unforgiving if you don't do it exactly right. Also, the ending was something I found really frustrating because it was, well, nothing like the rest of the game and not the kind of thing I wanted to play. And he's talking about the very last level. And spoiler alert, so skip ahead 60 seconds if you don't want to hear this. I think at the last level, the guy who was selling you all the stuff in the recycle yard, he's Big Louie, and then you have to do some sort of a sliding puzzle game in order to beat him. I think I saw pictures somewhere, I didn't get that far. Anyways, if you can get over the frustration of the unforgiving jumps, there's a lot to see and do in the game. The Bentley Bear homebrew is more fun in my opinion, but Scrapyard Dog is an enjoyable platformer with some rough spots that could have been smoothed out a little. Dauber from Pie Factory says, Phil, major congratulations on your world record. Thank you. I was thrilled to see your name on the Twin Galaxies leaderboard for one of my favorite bizarre Atari games. Yeah, I got the world record for Tax Avoiders on the 2600. Don't have either of those games. Let me get back to you on them. Trevor says, Meltdown trash. There are times that it is inconceivable. I'm thinking of, Princess Bride? Unbelievable that a game makes it out the door and becomes published and mass distributed. The game is sterling example. It is pretty awful on many levels. I've already wasted more words on it than it deserved. Scrapyard Dog is meh. I want to not only give this game a solid rating, I want it to be Hall of Fame material. However, outside the graphics and the smooth scrolling animation, the overall game, most importantly, the control mechanics, are just meh. The game often feels like you should move at lightning speed, but some of the obstacles are designed quite unfairly, to the point that it encourages you to approach the entire level at a snail's pace, despite the speed tease. Sorry that I'm tripping on my tongue today. The quickly encountered tires and basketballs, for instance, are too damaging and consistent. It is similar to what is referred to in some later generation platform titles as unexpected or poorly designed pop-out. What could have helped balance this out was a health meter bar such as found in the games like Wonder Boy instead of the default 2-hit chance with Louie. Another issue with the game is the propulsion of your speed being regulated, how consistently you're pressing the joystick in the desired direction, as if intended for an analog stick instead of a digital one. The slow down running effect reminds me of walking across an ice platform in Mario Brothers, although not as severe. It would have served much better to have followed the typical hold the button down to run scheme. Whereas the control speed of the character is not smooth, his animation sure is, as well as the control of his jumps is definitely the highlight of the game. The melody is not bad, albeit not great for Tia, but unfortunately for me it does get under my skin after a while. Pokey could have performed wonders here, obviously, and really would have helped better ensure a solid rating. Nonetheless, if there would have been some sort of awesome boss battles, or even the one final boss battle was more in the lines of what was found in Midnight Mutants Dr. Evil, or the dragon when battling on the Green Plain Ninja Golf, it would have helped promote the rating of this game beautifully and perhaps made the playthrough worthwhile. Sadly, it falls flat and hard respecting the area where they swap the puzzle pieces to make the picture as the final challenge as a boss battle. It has to be one of the most disappointing and anticlimactic final battle endings to a side-scrolling platform ever. Therefore, among the sound, controller mechanics, difficulty design issues, and the demotivating final battle, it leaves this as a meh game for me. The animation and graphics is top-notch for sure. Nevertheless, it isn't enough to overlook the controls, sound design, lousy, out-of-place final challenge, regardless of how excellent looking. Thank you, Trevor, for that very in-depth kind of review there. Jinx says, Meltdown meh. I like light gun games, okay? Scrapyard is, meh. I like light gun games, okay? Question mark. Scrapyard is solid just because of the graphics, the difficulty and sound keep it from being a great game. Saves 2600, Meltdown trash. Scrapyard Dog, meh. Nice try at a platformer Atari, but of course falls flat on his nose. But bunching. Gambler 172 says Meltdown is trash. Scrapyard Dog is a solid game, but much too heavy to play. Greetings, Walter. Greetings, Walter. Soul Blazer. Meltdown. I like the fact that the 7800 had a number of light gun games for it, like the NES and Sega Master System did, but most of them are just not very good for one reason or another. Meltdown is another example. The colors are decent, the gameplay is unique, but it's also confusing, hard, doesn't offer up enough different things to keep the gameplay interesting as you go through it. The music, if you can call it that, is uninspired and repeats too quickly. And even playing this in emulation with the mouse to emulate the light gun, I had problems shooting things correctly. Seems like Atari had a number of unique ideas for 7800 games that failed to execute on several levels. And this game is no exception. Trash rating. Scrapyard Dog, when the angry video game nerd features this game as part of his series of bad video game covers, you know you're in for something interesting here. I was curious enough to want to play the Lynx version of the game as well, and I gotta say I like the Lynx version better. Well, it looks better to me, I've never played it. Concerning the 7800 version, the title screen and the graphics are both cool and disturbing at the same time. I can understand that. So it seems your dog is kidnapped and you control a guy with a really big nose to go rescue him. It's different at least. The music is alright by 7800 standards, graphics are pretty good, controls handle well, and the gameplay consists of you bobbing on bad guys, giving up items to collect, and bonus rooms you can drop down into. The whole game feels and plays like Mario clone. Not that it's a bad thing, it's pretty original for the 7800, but I wouldn't call it a great game. Like I said, Link's version did everything better, but I had fun playing it, and I believe this is the only platformer for the 7800, rating solid. Inky from Pie Factory never played Meltdown. As for Scrapyard Dog, I remember being excited about the Mario-type platformer on the 7800, then I played it. The game has its moments, like the piano minigame, but for my money, the fun overall just isn't there. Your character is butt ugly, and no charm or charisma, and the jumps. Oh man, the jumps. I stopped playing it after I come into a jump I could always make, but never ever make across. It doesn't help when jumping from sewer pipe to sewer pipe, that's what you're supposed to land on, isn't that obvious. I don't think I revisited the game in a couple of years. I may do it again, but this is an ugly game, and it's meh. I don't rate it lower, but as it does show promise. If I could figure out how to hack the graphics, I might make it a bit more playable. And let's see. Drac is back responded to Trevor, said great points on the sound. I didn't mind it, mostly because I kept the volume very low, even on the higher notes. Oh, it kept the volume low. And I thought some of the sound effects, like the basketballs bouncing, weren't bad. There's definitely better examples of 7800 sound with the TIA like Midnight Mutants, but it didn't bug me. Ska Music Fan 83, the first time I think I've heard from him. I totally agree. He's talking about the sounds that was just brought up. For the most part, the sound and music in both Scrapyard Dog and Midnight Mutants is pretty good. I always like the music in the city levels of Scrapyard Dog.
At this point, Phil had to be temporarily transported away. He has now returned to resume listener feedback.
Okay, Bass Guitar, he says Meltdown is a meh, and Scrapyard Dog is meh as well. I have Meltdown, but I'm not familiar enough with it to comment further. I suppose the fact that it never really grabbed me enough to play it is telling. I didn't hate it or love it. It just didn't stand out to me. Maybe it's time to revisit this one. Scrapyard Dog is a dollar store brand of Super Mario Brothers. Okay, that's not entirely fair or accurate, but Atari was clearly going for that kind of game. However, they didn't seem to grasp the thing that made Super Mario a great game. The tight controls, a sense of exploration, the memorable characters and monsters, the music, etc. The result is different enough from Super Mario in its own right, and Scrapyard does some cool things and does them well, but it feels very generic overall. It's not a bad game by any stretch, but in the back of my mind, I'm always comparing it to Super Mario, a comparison that rarely swings in Scrapyard's favor. But BITD, But if BITD I had a 7800 instead of a NES, I'd want this game. And I'd no doubt make up a reason why it's better than Super Mario. Drac is back. Let's see. He said, not sure if others who had the 7800 back then had the same experience as I did. Among my friends, there was a perception that the 7800 had technical limits that prevented it from playing long side-scrolling adventures. When you got an NES, you got Super Mario, Metroid Adventure Island, Castlevania, stuff with lots of levels. When you got a Master System, you got Alex Kidd, Wonder Boy Shinobi, and later Sonic. For the first several years, 7800 games seemed short and simple. Choplifter was a little playing field. Pole Position 2 had 4 tracks. 101 Basketball was one screen. So when Scrapyard Dog and some of the later 7800 games came along, it settled the game length with a function of Tramiel cheapness and not a limitation of the 7800's abilities. With Scrapyard Dog in particular, I remember a friend of mine who often criticized 7800 for having short, simple games saying, "Holy cow, I guess I was dead wrong," when he saw it. There wasn't a lot of comparing Scrapyard Dog as a platformer against Super Mario as a platformer, rather a complete surprise that there was even a platformer on the 7800. And I'll just interject here too. I think one of the things too about the Tramiel thing, besides the cheapness, I think it was his belief in porting computer games that had a different kind of flavor to them than console games, than platformers. Because a lot of the games that came on, like the super games, were like the Impossible Missions and stuff like that. You know, they came from computer systems, probably from his time with Commodore, and there is a difference between computer games and home system games, in my opinion. So I think maybe Tramiel didn't realize where gaming was going as far as the consumer was concerned when it came to a home system. So that's just my kind of 2 cents. Sean says Meltdown's trash. Scrapyard Dog is meh. A plus to a salad, so it could have been better. David Calgary, 29. Scrapyard Dog always seems to suffer in comparison to the same title on the Lynx. I think the Lynx title is one of the best on the system, and was very disappointed when I finally got the 7800 game. The Lynx game has some wonderful levels and great surprises, but the 7800 version simply feels flat and joyless. Wow. So thank you for all those feedback over at AtariH and Atari.io. Both great sites. Both have some cool forums. Let's go to the mailbag. You can mail me at Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. That's Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. And this is from Cover Art Kevin. And he has some real quick ratings for me. Meltdown, meh. I like all the light gun games for the 7800, but I haven't played this one in several years, so that must mean it's a meh for me. Scrapyard Dog, salad. I love this game. I might actually place it as a Hall of Fame once I sit down and rank the whole 7800 library, but I'm guessing I might be squeezed out of the top 5 for me. Graphically, the game looks great. The sound effects get the job done. The music is actually decent for the TIA. That's like... It seems like a lot of people have said that. It controls pretty good, but the level layouts keep me from really speeding through. Yeah, the levels just seem really long. I can't see a speed run like you see in Super Mario. It's really nice to see a good-looking platformer on the 7800 with hidden areas, secret items, and a shop screen for purchasing power-ups. The thing that might keep it from a Hall of Fame category is the difficulty. I've only ever beaten it once, and that was with save states in an emulator. All right, so let's go ahead and go to the audio. I got a couple submissions. The first one is from a Gray Defender who won the Ed Ladden Super Twin 78, if you remember that contest I had way back in the Ferg. So let's see what he has to say today.
Hey Phil, this is G-Ray Defender on YouTube, also known as Glenn, IRL. Last year I was the winner of one of your contests, the Super Twin 78 from Ed Ladden Controllers. This is a great controller and I was so excited to win I created a video on my channel showing it off. I just wanted you to know that us fans, we appreciate all that you do for us, the podcasts you've been doing, and your terrific YouTube channel. I know from experience that creating the videos can take up a lot of time, and it's not just creating the videos. You have to play the games. In some cases, you're completing the games, and then you're going back and recording all that, and you're sharing it with us, and we all appreciate that. Where else can you learn about darn near anything retro gaming related? On the No Swear Gamer channel, you will find great game reviews, book reviews, gameplay, game completions, Easter eggs, toy reviews, and much, much more. This is G-Ray Defender, and you're listening to Phil, the No Swear Gamer. I just had to do a little bumper so you'll keep making the podcasts.
That was great. Thank you so much. I'm very humbled by that. Yeah, thanks a lot. And I'm sorry that I put the G-Ray and I connected them into Gray. So my mistake there. I should have known better, but glad you're enjoying that Super Twin 78. So go ahead to YouTube, and if you just search for Ed Ladden Super Twin 78, you'll see his video. Or if you search for G-Ray Defender. So what up, G? So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Also got some feedback from Shinto from the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast. I believe he's doing Iron Soldier next, so be sure to check that out. So let's see what he has to say in today's edition of Shinto Says.
These two games represent the last of my Radio Shack catalog purchases. Meltdown I bought because it was a light gun game, and I've mentioned before, probably more than once, how much I like light gun games. On the 7800, I think they hold a particular fascination for me because there was never an official 7800 light gun, not even as vaporware in the catalogs. My first reaction with Meltdown when I played it was, wait, I'm supposed to shoot these tiny things, these little squares? No way. I could barely shoot the lights out in the village stage and crossbow, and these targets in Meltdown are about the same size and actually move. There's no way. But as I continued playing, I found myself getting more into this one, not just hitting the targets in a panic, but employing strategy where you can lay down temporary barriers. The rapid-fire power-up continuous shot, once I discovered that was the coolest thing ever. I think I was able to make it pretty far in this game, but the high score binder unfortunately can't back up my claim. It's not even listed. That's kind of the way it was with these late-release 7800 games. We stopped keeping track, which is kind of sad. But I think Meltdown is a solid game, a low solid perhaps, because I'm not sure I've played this game more than once or twice since I bought it in the early 90s. Something I have played more recently is Scrapyard Dog, because my daughter likes this one. More on that in a bit. I was admittedly jealous of my friends and their Nintendo Entertainment Systems playing these platform-style games, which were beyond anything I had on the 2600 or 7800. But when I got the Atari Lynx, that one had its share of platformers, and one of them was this impressive little title called Scrapyard Dog. Had catchy music and solid, if difficult, gameplay. It's always bothered me that I was never able to rescue my poor dog in that game. Anyway, since I enjoyed the game on the Lynx, I thought I would get the 7800 version as well when I saw it listed in that catalog. I was disappointed. This isn't anywhere close to the quality of the Lynx game. The rules are different. For example, you don't have an unlimited number of cans in the 7800 version. The music wasn't as catchy, and worst of all, the guy that you're controlling has a face that only his dog could love. Yeah, call me shallow if you must, but that grotesque, oversized, throbbing red nose is a questionable artistic decision. But the more I got into the game, the more I liked it. Sure, it's different from the Lynx version, but the Lynx is a more powerful system. The graphics are impressive for the 7800, and I just love the way the words showing the world and level slide in cycle color. Love it. But like the Lynx version, I've never been able to rescue my dog here either. I was stuck in the first sewer level trying to make an impossible jump. I mentioned before that my daughter likes this game, and she always picks it out on our annual daddy-daughter game day. On my last attempt, I was able to make that impossible jump in the sewers. I don't even know how I did it, and I was so shocked that immediately after clearing the jump, I fell off a nearby platform and died. Scrapyard Dog is also going to get a solid rating from me. I was spoiled by the Lynx version ahead of time, but the game on the 7800 proves that the system can handle a decent platformer. If you look past the killer basketballs and the protagonist's giant schnoz and the occasional impossible jump, I think Scrapyard Dog has a lot to offer. I could go on and on about the Lynx version, but I think I'll save that for a different podcast altogether.
Thanks, Shinto. And I just want to take a moment and say something real quick. First of all, he said in his email that he might only have a 30-second submission on basketball because that's about the limit of his experience. He wondered if that was too short. No, please send it in. And I just want to thank you for just so faithfully sending in these submissions. It's really been something that I look forward to every time I put the podcast together to see what you got to say about the game. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate that you put together GameByGamePodcast.com or whatever that's called, where people can look up Game by Game podcasts on different systems and your show as well. So thanks for everything, Shinto. Really appreciate that. And if you would like to ever be like Shinto and send in a audio submission or a text submission, please do so. You know, the show's almost over. So even if it's an old game, you want to talk about Galaga or Centipede, you want to talk about Ninja Golf. Who doesn't want to talk about Ninja Golf? Go ahead and send it to Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. That's Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. And speaking of the Radio Shack catalogs, Ed from Ed Ladden did send me a link where you could look up all these old Radio Shack catalogs, except I couldn't find the Atari games. I guess they were in some sort of index, like a separate catalog. They weren't in the main one. And the site that he sent me to didn't have those index catalogs, those separate catalogs. So I was bummed. I was like, I can't find them. Maybe they're out there somewhere. But be sure to check out edladden.com. Get a Seagull 78 adapter. It lets you use Sega Genesis controllers with the 7800. It is a lifesaver. Or look at some of his premium joysticks. I know he's branching off into the ColecoVision. So if you have a ColecoVision, he has some high quality stuff there as well. I use that Seagull 78 adapter all the time, and it is great. I've heard nothing but good things about it. Now it's my turn to rate the games. Meltdown, a lot of action. I'll say that. There's a lot of action, lots of levels, but it's almost too much. My hand starts cramping after a while. Thankfully, it does have a password save feature, but I thought they could have probably knocked off five levels or more. Probably. I mean, the ending wasn't that great. I remember seeing that, so it wasn't like, woo, you know, and there's not a lot of difference between the levels. It just seems like minor differences because the graphics, the sprites are so tiny. And so much blinking because I had to shoot the gun so much. So I'm giving that a meh. It's probably my least favorite light gun game. I think I probably would rather play Barnyard Blaster, even though I don't really enjoy that as much. So yeah, that's going to be a meh for me. It seemed like most people with Meltdown were either meh or trash, kind of in that zone. Scrapyard Dog, I appreciate what they were doing with the game, but for me, it didn't do much. And I think for me, it's a couple things, and people touched on this. First of all, the controls are a little too loose, especially when you compare it to the tight controls of Super Mario Brothers. And there's some cheap hits where the guys come at you and you just like someone said, where you should be able to go fast, but if you go fast, you're going to just get hit by everything. So you have to take it slow. And that makes the levels really too long. This game is just too long. This game needed a password feature. I have no desire really to go back to it because, you know, I played through it. I was able to get through the first 3 levels to get to the second set of levels, but I don't know. If it had a password feature, I might give it a try. I don't do emulation, so I don't use save states. So it's just meh. I mean, and yeah, I think it's funny that Shinto brought up the, you know, you're this big nose guy, and that the cover art is kind of off-putting. It's like he doesn't look like the kind of person I want to be, you know. You think of all the cover arts, like I'm thinking right now in my head, Golden Axe, you have these warriors all buff and they got their swords and their axes, and then you have Scrapyard Dog. You know, he kind of sounds like a loser in the manual. The manual's great, by the way. Really dug the story, but he kind of sounds a little bit like a loser. Like, okay, he's saving his dog. That sounds really good, but he doesn't sound like the kind of guy that you aspire to be. but it wouldn't have mattered if the controls were tighter, because if the game's fun, the game's fun, and I just didn't find it that fun. I'm going to give it a meh. A lot of people gave it a solid. For me, it's a meh. And that's a shame, because there's really not a lot of platforming action on the 7800 as far as the official releases go. So there you go. That's the end of Meltdown and Scrapyard Dog. So next episode, episode 30, is going to cover Basket Brawl and Midnight Mutants. That will be the last two officially released games. Then after that, thanks to Cover Art Kevin, I am going to do a special episode covering some prototypes like Missing in Action and Clax and stuff like that. And for Basket Brawl and Midnight Mutants, if you have any feedback for those two games or any previous games, please send it in. Feedback's getting kind of thin because a lot of people aren't used to these games. So if you want to pad it with some Dig Dug memories or something like that, go ahead. Talk to me about Ball Blazer or Commando. That'd be great. The prototype episode, I don't know if it's going to be long or short. I haven't decided yet. I haven't even had time to really get my hands dirty as far as playing the games. I'll probably only include feedback if it has to deal with prototypes in general. So if you have anything about the prototypes, you can go there. And then the final episode will be the Hall of Fame and Trash Bin episode. I want to know your top 5 games and your bottom 5 games, and any feedback at all, because that'll be it. That'll be the last one. So you could talk about anything 7800 related. That'll be your last chance. I do want to apologize. This episode took a long time to get out. Recently I moved, and I've had a tremendously hard time adjusting in certain areas, especially when it comes to the podcasting. Here's the deal. Usually I record the show after my wife and kids go to bed, and I was able to do that much more easily before the move. I don't know what it is, but after the move, they go to bed, I'm exhausted. I just can't stay up, and I just want to pass out and go to sleep. And recording, a podcast that's an hour or two long. Usually I'd marathon. I do the whole recording session in one night, and it was just too hard. So I apologize. I've tried to get it out. I've readjusted some things in my schedule. I've had a lot of first things that have to come first in my life that I had to take care of, and I hope you guys appreciate that and understand that. So I don't know when I'll get Basket Brawl and Midnight Mutants done. I'm hoping to do it within 2 weeks like I used to. That's my goal. But if it's a little longer, please accept my apologies. And I want to give you a good product. I don't want to just rush through things. So I'm trying my best here. I hope you appreciate that. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can. Go facebook.com/7800 Game by Game Podcast. I'm also the No Swear Gamer. You can follow me on Facebook as that as well, or Twitter, the No Swear Gamer. And if you want to support me, you can through Patreon, patreon.com/No Swear Gamer. I was going to list all the patrons who've supported me. Thank you if that's you. My internet's down. And right now at this moment it's down, and I was just going to go to the website and read through the list. I know G-Ray Defender just recently signed up. I got an email notification from him. So thank you. And thank you anyone else who's recently signed up or who has been through since the beginning. There's so many of you, I don't want to, start listing off names and then make someone, feel like bad because I forget to mention them. So thank you everyone who supported. I'm really humbled by that. It does help. I'm also a member of the Retro Junkies Network, so go to theretrojunkies.com to find more podcasts and videos as well. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. Finally, the much delayed episode 29 is in the books. I guess that's it. So guys, remember, games are fun, but always keep first things first. I will catch you later. Have a good evening or day or afternoon, whatever it may be for you.
For gamer, I think I was just listening to his episode about Ninja Golf recently for the Atari 7800. It's Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. He reviewed Ninja Golf. It occurs to me he's got to be getting near the end of Atari 7800 Game by Game, so that's interesting. I don't know if he's going to move on to another system or what. When he finishes the series, if he listens to the end of the show, I don't know if he listens to the end of the show, but if he does, why don't you come on when you're done with the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, and we'll talk about what's next. If there is a next, I don't know. Maybe he'll go on to the 5200 or some other system.
Yeah, at the very least, he'll have the hindsight and perspective to be able to talk about the Atari 7800 catalog and maybe give his opinion on what's the best games and worst games for the system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we haven't talked about the 7800 that much recently.
Yeah, kind of a lesser known system. but definitely a classic.
All right, so I think it's everything. So thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next week.